Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're stepping right inside the tactical war room to dissect a move that has absolutely stunned military analysts and energy traders alike. We are talking about a massive naval fleet, fully mobilized, ready to break a global blockade that's literally strangling the world's energy supply chain. The stakes? Well, it's a global economy teetering right on the absolute brink of a severe recession. And then, right at the precipice of conflict, a sudden, completely unexpected halt.
So, let's dive right into this central mystery. Why on earth did President Trump abruptly halt the most ambitious naval mission of his presidency just 50 hours after it began? It's a question that's echoing through the halls of Washington and rattling global markets right now. And the answer? It's hidden in the hard data and the high-stakes diplomacy we're about to unpack. Let's get into it.
Section 1. The Project Freedom Mission.
So, Project Freedom was announced as this absolutely critical military effort, intended to restore some sort of normalcy to the global economy. It was specifically launched to provide armed escorts, to guide stranded tankers safely out through the Strait of Hormuz, effectively breaking a crippling maritime blockade. To truly grasp the gravity of this, just imagine it. Massive, slow-moving commercial vessels, some carrying millions of barrels of crude oil, trying to navigate one of the narrowest, most heavily militarized choke points on Earth. Providing a military escort for these leviathans, that means placing highly armed warships directly in the crosshairs of a volatile conflict zone, where literally a single miscalculation could ignite a massive regional war.
But if you look closely at the underlying strategy, this wasn't just a transport or escort mission. It was a clear, forceful demonstration of the maximum pressure doctrine. The whole mechanics of maximum pressure rely on this devastating 1-2 punch, severe economic strangulation paired with overwhelming military posturing. The ultimate goal here, breaking Tehran's grip on the world's most critical waterway. Washington calculated that by projecting absolute naval supremacy, they could achieve these initial objectives and force a reopening of the strait without actually having to fire a single shot.
And this timeline brilliantly illustrates just how rapidly this geopolitical crisis evolved. We moved from the initial late February blockade straight into the massive Day 1 mission launch of Project Freedom, and then, boom, it culminates abruptly in a sudden 50-hour halt. Think about the logistical whiplash involved here. Mobilizing a global superpower's naval fleet, coordinating destroyers, air support, huge global logistics chains, only to basically slam on the brakes roughly 2 days later? That is historically anomalous. It's an incredibly compressed, chaotic time frame that signals something massive suddenly shifted behind closed doors.
Section 2. The Sudden Tactical Reset.
The official explanation for the pause, coming directly from President Trump, was that it followed, quote, very good talks with Iranian representatives. Now, this presents a fascinating strategic paradox. We have to ask ourselves, do very good talks typically materialize right smack in the middle of a kinetic military launch? Usually no. It suggests a rapid 11th-hour pivot from the very edge of armed conflict right back to the negotiating table. It was a sudden shift that caught international observers completely off guard.
Peeling back the layers, the behind-the-scenes data suggests this pause might actually be a calculated concession to Pakistani mediators. These mediators are currently working tirelessly to broker a permanent ceasefire. Now, why Pakistan? Well, because they occupy a highly unique geopolitical position. Maintaining complex, long-standing ties with both Washington and Tehran, they serve as one of the few viable backchannels capable of bridging this incredibly tense standoff. Their sudden involvement strongly hints at a diplomatic off-ramp that just wasn't previously visible to the public.
Now here is where it gets really interesting. Look at the glaring contradiction between Washington's messaging and the actual physical reality on the water. Secretary of State Marco Rubio declared the initial offensive objectives of what was termed Operation Epic Fury as completely finished. Done. Yet the physical blockade hasn't moved an inch. Those massive commercial ships? They remain entirely trapped in the Gulf. This stark disconnect between declaring tactical success on paper and the unchanged reality of a paralyzed waterway remains a huge piece of this puzzle.
Moving on to Section 3, the Global Energy Crisis.
A staggering 20% of the world's entire supply of oil and liquefied natural gas is currently paralyzed behind this blockade. In global energy terms, that is a massive, immediate shock to the system. An overnight paralysis of 1/5 of the globe's energy supply doesn't just mean a temporary disruption, it threatens to fundamentally break global supply chains.
We're talking about halting maritime shipping networks worldwide and starving major industrial economies of the critical fuel they need just to keep the lights on and the factories running.
And because so few vessels can actually transit the strait right now, this economic pain is setting in deep. And honestly, you're going to feel it directly in your own wallet. What President Trump initially called a short-term hardship at the gas pump is rapidly becoming a long-term reality for Americans. Short-term shocks to LNG and oil trigger a severe domino effect. They drastically increase costs for manufacturing, global logistics, and even the transportation of everyday goods to your local grocery store. The longer this 50-hour pause stretches into days, the more permanent those sweeping inflation hikes become across the entire economy.
Which brings us to Section 4, the high-stakes standoff. Let's examine the terms currently on the table. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard has set their parameters, stating that the vital waterway will only fully reopen when they determine that the, quote, aggressors' threats have ended. This is an absolute masterclass in strategic ambiguity. You see, by using a fluid, undefined term like aggressors' threats, Tehran effectively sets a moving goalpost. It allows them to maintain high leverage in negotiations, giving them the ultimate flexibility to declare exactly when, and only when, their specific conditions for reopening the strait have actually been met.
Conversely, on the other side of this stalemate, President Trump has drawn an equally hard line. He's warned that if a deal isn't reached, the bombing starts, with even higher intensity. Both sides are communicating immense pressure and massive consequence here. And this perfectly illustrates that the 50-hour pause is not a true de-escalation. It's merely a breather. Both sides currently have their fingers hovering directly over the trigger, just waiting to see who blinks first.
So, as we track these maximum security risks, we're left with one critical question to consider based on everything we've just unpacked. Has the U.S. blinked? Or is this tactical pause the prelude to a far greater global event? Is this 50-hour pause a masterstroke of diplomacy that's going to save the global economy, or is it merely the calm before a much, much larger storm? I'll leave you to think about what this data tells us about the future of the Gulf. Thank you for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking questions and keep learning.